Mark and Becky have a son Caleb and his wife Kaylin, and daughter Grace, who are all Aggies, and a rat terrier named Tony, and multiple backyard chickens. Tony, you chase chickens at all?
All the time.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure he's a normal dog.
Yeah.
A devoted football fan, you can often find Becky cheering for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, Mizzou Tigers, or our USU Aggies. And we've had a lot to cheer about, at least for the Aggies, from the Aggie standpoint. And for those of you who don't realize it, Mark actually drives the equipment truck for the football team. So, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Lawver. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you everybody for being here today. I want to express my gratitude to Provost Gailey and President Cockett for inviting me to deliver this inaugural address today. It really is a special time for me because it gave me an opportunity to reflect back on how I got here in my academic career. It's something that I don't think anyone, not even me, expected. Sometimes in life you think that who you become happens by chance or by accident, or that to be successful you have to know exactly what you want when you want it. I often tell people that I discovered agriculture by accident. And today I want to share with you my history, my story, my first job, and how all these things led me here to Utah State. Where did I come from? All right, so my mom was a nurse, and my dad was an engineer for the power company. And my brother and sister and I grew up living in a little house on the edge of town in Lawver, Nebraska. We spent our days playing tag, coming home when the street lights came on, digging in the soil and running through the corn rows in a field right behind our house. But we didn't live on a farm. It was just our housing development backed up to a farm. And a lot of times we spent hanging out at that big tree up at the top of the hill. In fact, this is a photo that my siblings have fought me for a few times. So it just reminds us of our childhood. But I loved spending time in the garden with my mom and building wood projects in the basement with my dad. But as I reflected on my career, I often wondered how I got to agriculture and how I got into teaching. Because I didn't grow up on a farm, and I didn't have FFA as a high school student. But I want to tell you a little bit about both of my grandfathers, which might give you a little clue. So my grandpa Epperson was a born farmer. He had a small operation that included 35 Holstein, Angus, and Shorthorn cows. He had a Shorthorn bull, about 170 Hampshire hogs, 60 Leghorn hens, 135 White Rock bullets, multiple John Deere tractors. He raised corn, soybeans, oats, and alfalfa. But he sold the farm in the 50s and went to work for Montgomery Ward. Does anybody know Montgomery Ward? Okay, excellent. And he also worked for Coca-Cola. When he retired, he decided to go back to his love of the land and grew the most amazing tomatoes, gourds, and vegetables you could find. And he and my grandma spent countless Saturdays at the Blair's Farmers Market in Blair, Nebraska, and people would line up for Dale's sweet corn. Kaylin, my Uncle Jeff has carried on the tradition of growing a giant garden for the farmers market. Kaylin kind of loves that sweet corn, right? Now, my grandpa Hightower, he was an industrial science teacher who started teaching in 1946 at Tech High in Omaha. I wanted to show these to you. These are from my office. I got them on my shelf. This is my grandpa's first self-help hints for the teacher book from 1946. His industrial arts farm mechanic for Nebraska schools from 55. I've got these, I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a minute, but these are some common wood joists and a whole file of bench metal plans. Anyway, so my grandpa, when he was hired in 1946, he inherited a blacksmith shop with coal-fired forges. I can't say it all together. But he said it was the only blacksmith shop in town at the time. And he taught beginning woodshop, advanced woodworking, furniture construction and finishing, and he even introduced a carpentry class where he partnered with the Carpenters Union to create an apprenticeship program. He then moved to school to South High in Omaha, where he was head of the Industrial Science Department with 13 faculty and 1,300 students a year. But he did not apply for his first job, and this is critical to my story to tell you here in just a minute. He was asked by the Dean of the College of Education at the University of Nebraska-Omaha to apply for that first job. He told him that shop teachers were scarce and that the Omaha Public School District really wanted him to come on board. So my grandpa would go on to teach for 37 years. Now I told you that my mom was a nurse and my dad worked for the power company. Well, my grandma Epperson, she was also a nurse, and so were my two aunts. My grandpa Hightower was the teacher, so were my two aunts on that side. And so when we were kids, it was either you were going to become a teacher or you were going to become a nurse. My sister's the nurse, my brother works for the power company, and so left me to be a teacher. But, we need to talk about high school. By the time I made it to high school, my mom, I was what my mom would call a social butterfly. My husband calls me a people collector. But I was in cross country, I was in the musical, I was in the marching band, I was on the dance team. Anything you could possibly think of, I was doing it. I was in high school all the time. I loved it. And I loved my teachers. Mr. Hamill taught British literature. Grace, do I love to read? Kind of. But Mr. Hamill made that British literature class really fun because he asked bonus questions every Friday about the Beatles. Mr. Patton, my biology teacher, we dissected everything under the sun you could possibly imagine. Miss Stanichka, our PE teacher, who was super passionate about fitness, wore out the buns of steel VHS tape on us girls. And then Mr. Torrens, yes, he's Michael Torrens' uncle. Very small world, but Mr. Torrens is my choir teacher. And he loved to teach us how to sing and how to act. And he really put up with my dreams of being the next Winona Judd or Molly Ringwald. I mean, it was the early 90s. But I loved school and I had lots of amazing teachers. But it still surprised my parents one night when we were walking down the track and they said, next up, Becky Hightower. Becky wants to be a teacher. And my parents looked at me like, what? You want to be a teacher? So that's what I planned to do my senior year. But fast forward to my freshman year of college at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I had toured East Campus. If anybody knows East Campus at UNL, it's the Ag Campus. I moved to Lincoln, into the dorms with a friend, and I changed my major to animal science. I have no idea why. It might have been because I spent the summer listening to Garth Brooks. Or that I went to multiple rodeos. Or that maybe I thought I'd meet a cute boy from the ranch and I could be the next pioneer woman, but I thought animal science was it. Anyhow, my best friend in the dorm, her name was Jerry. She was from Burwell, Nebraska. It's the home of Nebraska's biggest rodeo, for those of you that don't know. And we rode the bus from East Campus to City Campus to go to an English class every week. And studying animal science was pretty cool. But that was until I met Brad. Brad was a cowboy from western Nebraska. He was also a state FFA officer. And Brad and Jerry had been talking about FFA and Ag Ed, and I had no idea what it was. So Brad offered to take me to a tiny little town in north central Nebraska to go on a FFA visit with him. And that that's where I fell in love, and not regret. It was where I discovered that you could teach agriculture in high school to students. All these things that I was learning about animal science, everything that I've learned about plant science, I could be teaching to high school kids. And so, I got home, I changed my major right away, started majoring in agricultural education. And I was convinced that I could totally do this job. Until I was told by my advisor that you're a girl, you're not from a farm, you didn't have FFA in high school, there's no way you could be an ag teacher. So I moved home and got a job at ConAgra. I changed my major to human resources, and I went an entire year thinking that I'd be driving 45 minutes from my mom and dad's house to work on the 7th floor of this building and go to night classes forever. Until one day I decided I'm going back to UNL, and I went back with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And I made more friends. I traveled home with random kids to ride horses, to vaccinate calves, to pick corn. I got a job at the farm store Country General where I met my next cowboy. This time, I actually did fall in love. But I was taking every class that I possibly could just to get out of my comfort zone. I had more fantastic teachers at UNL, like Keith Gilster, my old science professor, who knew every single student's name and where they were from and started every day with, "It's a great day in the state of Nebraska." Every single class. Mark knows this too. I liked that class so much, I still have the textbook. But Dr. Ozzie Gilbertson, Lawver, Barrett, Linden, and Boyd Bell, all professors in agricultural education, who were incredibly innovative and patient teachers that gave me the opportunity to experience FFA, to travel, to learn how to be good teachers, a good teacher. And I think, yes, that they still have their doubts, but I worked really hard to prove them wrong. When it came time for me to select where I wanted to go student teach, I picked my spot very purposefully. I wanted an experience somewhere different than where I grew up, somewhere where I could learn something new. And so I chose Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. 7 hours from home, 2 good old boy ag teachers. I drove my purple Saturn to western Nebraska, parked it between two dually pickup trucks at the ag building, and I lived in a motel for $150 a week for a whole semester. Man, if you can do that, you can do anything. When I met Bob, he still calls me about once a year. He's been retired for several years now, but when I met Bob and Shane Tompkins, my 2 cooperating teachers, they said, "You didn't grow up on a farm? You didn't have FFA? All right, let's get out in the shop, let's go. You're going to teach this stuff and you're going to be fine." They're really some of my biggest cheerleaders. So I got to teach all kinds of things for them. They took me to National FFA Convention for the first time. They taught me how to be tough, but how to be caring, and how to set high expectations, but how to give students grace when they needed it. And the value of connecting with parents and the community, and the importance of leadership and service, and giving back to those who supported you. It was an amazing experience, yet I don't think people still thought that I could actually do this job. So I took a time out. Similar to my grandpa Hightower, I graduated from UNL, and I didn't get a teaching job right out of college. I interviewed for a few, but nothing really stuck, and my parents, Caleb, this might sound familiar, my parents encouraged me to just find something, anything, full-time, with benefits, so I could start supporting myself and get out of the house. You're out of my house, but Mark and I were engaged at the time, and he was still in school, so I took a job as the Director of Human Relations for Central Confinement Services. They are a builder of swine, dairy, beef, and poultry facilities. And I was able to use some of my teaching and leadership skills that I learned as an undergraduate and during student teaching to make hiring decisions for the accounting department and to manage the safety training and OSHA regulations for our fabrication facility. It was a good job, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. Until one day, that same advisor that told me I couldn't do this walked into that building and said, "I need you to take a job. There's a teacher shortage and we need you." So what did I do? I called Bob, I called Mark. everybody said, you need to do it, let's go. And I think Mark and I, we had just gotten engaged. We had about 18 months before we were planning to plan a wedding, and we were trying to fit that in between planting and harvest and Husker football, right? No? It wasn't 18 months? Or 12? Okay, whatever. We were still trying to plan between planting, harvest, and Nebraska football games, though, right?
Toy shows.
Oh, and toy shows. Forgot about those. Anyway, I applied for this job in Bassett, Nebraska, and got my first job in the Sandhills. Bassett, Nebraska is a tiny little town of about 500 people. There's about 1,000 people in the county. This is the only high school in the entire county. There's maybe one person per square mile in Rock County, Nebraska, probably more cows than people. But I taught 25 boys welding and engines with only 4 welders and 1 engine. We focused on range plants and cattle and natural resources, and they were some of the hardest working kids I'd ever worked with. I visited student projects where kids lived 60 miles out on the ranch, and visited cute little blonde girls who had calluses on their hands putting up hay out in the pasture. I rode out to check cows with other kids, took them to Kansas City for National FFA Convention, and some of those kids had never even been out of the county. But I was the 6th female ag teacher in the state at that time. Probably the first one who didn't grow up on a farm, and definitely the first one who didn't have FFA as a high school student. But I listened to my mentors and my cheerleaders, and I was doing it. Eventually, I found my dream position in North Bend, Nebraska. Again, the school was about 250 kids, 7th through 12th grade. Totally different from Bassett. North Bend's a river town surrounded by corn and bean fields, and instead of putting up hay, my students were detasseling corn and walking beans in the summer. It was a little bigger than Bassett, about 1,200 people. But our son Caleb, Mark and I are married right now, but our son Caleb, he could hop on the bus at the elementary school, ride it over to the high school, hop off the bus, walk to my classroom. Grace is in a great little daycare with some parents of one of my students. I was working on my master's in leadership education online when online was new. I may have gotten CDs in the mail from my stats class, so it was a long, long time ago. But Mark was an over-the-road truck driver, and I remember him telling me one day he'd love to move to Nephi, Utah. I didn't even know where Utah was. But about my 9th year of teaching in North Bend, things were fantastic. I'd settled in as a teacher, my students were doing amazing things, my alumni was working on getting me a little greenhouse, the FFA chapter was growing, one of my students was even elected the state FFA president. Things were clicking. I was serving in my professional association as the president-elect and at a workshop in Indianapolis. A dear friend of mine, Dr. John Lawver, who I was an undergraduate with, and is now a professor at K-State, who you may have seen in the picture previously in this PowerPoint, leaned over to me and said, "Becky, you really should finish your master's degree and go get your PhD." And I listened to him. Again, I called Bob Padula, my cooperating teacher. I called Dr. Bell, both who told me that it would be challenging, but to go ahead and take a chance. And so Mark and I made this decision to move our family to Missouri that set us on a path that no one, not even my parents or my teachers or myself, could have even imagined. So not really thinking about what a graduate assistantship would be or where I'd get a job when I was done, we moved to a little duplex in Columbia, Missouri. That was a little bit hard on Mark at the time because the Huskers and Mizzou were still in a fierce football battle. Oh, there's Missouri. Here's the guys I want to talk about. Mark and I often talk about art at that time that I was in grad school at Missouri. He calls it lightning in a bottle. I was really lucky to be part of the graduate program at the University of Missouri at this time. My mentors, Bobby Torres, Brian Gardner, and Rob Terry, really pushed me really, really hard to be a great teacher and a researcher. They taught me the importance of collaboration and hard work, and I was able to teach a lot of different courses in leadership, public speaking, classroom management, teaching methods. I worked on various research projects with graduate students who are some of my greatest friends still to this day. But in the end, what they taught me was how to be a good college teacher, how to tap into the characteristics of effective teaching, those things that impact student learning, and most importantly, how to be a good colleague, how to be patient, a good listener, and be a team player. And those three guys right there were really lightning in a bottle at that time. Again, I was faced with this challenge of finding a job. You see, Abby, it was the end of the Great Recession in 2009. She and I were both looking for jobs around the same time. Even Dr. Kate was too. All three of us. Mark was on a 3-time-a-week dedicated run from Iowa to Arkansas, hauling soybean oil. We were balancing. Are you crying? Because you're going to make me cry. So he was on a 3-times-a-week dedicated run from Iowa to Arkansas, hauling soybean oil for Tyson Food. We were balancing my schedule with our kids and their activities, and we're getting pretty anxious for me to find a job. I interviewed at several places, and boy do I have some stories, like the time I was interviewed at the Sirloin Stocking Buffet. or when I interviewed against my best friend and she got the job. Or when the first job offer I got was at a school that the salary was less than what I was making as a high school teacher, but they did have on-campus faculty housing. I turned that one down. I didn't think I could live in on-campus faculty housing. But I spent a semester in Missouri teaching some computers and ag class, just trying to make ends meet, give our kids a little bit of a sense of normalcy, staying in school with their friends. But there was one afternoon that Brian Garten walked up to me and said, Becky, there's a job at Utah State that I think you'd be perfect for. Rob, Bobby, Bob Padula, and Mark. Mark just really wanted me to get a job. He didn't care where at that time. But everybody really encouraged me to apply for this job here. So it was a cold December day that I drove to Logan. It was so windy that it was howling at the University Inn, right, Brian? You remember this. But from the moment I set foot on campus and met the people in the ASTE department, I knew that there was something different about this place. And that I could do something special here. So again, we packed up the family and moved to a state that I'd only visited once. We got the kids enrolled in school and bought a house and lived out of a hotel for about a week. And I started classes with just the few professional clothes I packed in my suitcase. Brian Warnick immediately accepted me and put up with a lot of the crazy ideas I brought with me from Nebraska and Missouri, and he taught me that for our ag ed program to be successful, we needed to work together to show our students that we cared and to model great teaching. So what's that old adage? Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And Brian cares. Brian cared as much about me and my success as he did about his own. But many people ask me, well, I'm running behind all my slides. Many people ask me what I do at USU, and I tell them I'm a teacher educator. Most of the time they don't get what that means. I'll tell them I'm an ag teacher educator, and that even gets more head shakes. It's not like English or biology, but the main focus of my career here at USU has been teaching high school ag teachers. It's where I got my start clear back in 1997, teaching the kids from the Sandhills about what life was like in eastern Nebraska, raising corn and soybeans, and teaching kids from eastern Nebraska what hardworking ranch life looks like. I teach teachers, I make meaning, I encourage, and I'm passionate about teaching and learning and helping others develop that passion in themselves. In the summer of 2019, I went to Bruce Miller and asked if there were any additional leadership responsibilities I could look at. I still enjoyed teaching, but I felt like I needed something more to develop myself. That August, I became the assistant department head. Bruce has this great knack of bringing out the best of people and helping them be successful. But it was probably the shortest job I ever had. Because by October, I was the interim department head. Nothing like looking for a way to build up some of your skills by just, jumping in. But I'll get to this story here in just a minute. The fall of 2019, I taught my last class of method students. They were probably one of the most fun group of future teachers I've ever gotten to work with. They were incredibly passionate about agriculture and really hungry for the skills needed to be great teachers. We spent a lot of that time in class learning how to teach, stretching their skills, getting them to be comfortable and confident for the classroom. And I'm also really passionate about creating a positive and caring relationship with my students, so I really want them to get to know me too. And I don't know if you can tell, I like to teach with a little bit of humor. teach, I would crack a joke here and there, but mostly it was this group teasing me. And mostly it was about the assistant department head gig and then the interim department head gig. See, they knew I was a real big fan of The Office. I don't know how many of you watched that show. They would often compare me to Dwight Schrute, the assistant to the So we started hearing stirrings of COVID that fall. We were close to the end of the semester. They were all getting ready to go their separate ways for student teaching, and I could sense that they were a little nervous about heading out into the unknown. But this group had a brilliant idea. They wanted to have the Dundee Awards. So the students planned this event where we would have fun and celebrate their last semester before they went out to student talk. Everyone got an award. They were pretty funny, like the girl who loved Pinterest. If you know me in a teaching methods class, I don't want them to teach off of Pinterest. It drives me crazy, but she loved it. The class clown, I think that was Nathan and Colton. Probably got a double award there. I can't remember what my award was, but I know Tyson Sorensen got the soapbox award. Because he does like to get up on his soapbox every once in a while. But I can't think of a better teacher to hand that class off to as I stepped into my new role. But it's those positive relationships with students that I value so much about being a teacher, because it plays a significant part in their growth and their success as it does my own and my satisfaction as a teacher. So I really try to live by that. They may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Quote. But that's what I do as a teacher. And I want to talk just a little bit about my research. The research I do is mostly about people, like you've heard before, why they do what they do, and what I can do to help them do it better. But it boils down to help educators be more successful, more effective, and make a greater impact. And it's through intentional and relevant opportunities for sound research-based professional development. These are a variety of the research topics and projects I've had the opportunity to work on with graduate students, and it's been fantastic. But the most impactful project I've been on began in 2012, when I was able to use my passion for helping teachers develop in an area that I wasn't entirely familiar with. It was a small collaborative project with Michael Payne. I remember the day he asked me I wanted to be on this grant with him, and at first I thought, no way, I know nothing about ag safety. But the more he talked, the more I listened. And he had the passion and expertise in ag safety, and I had the passion about curriculum and professional development. So we partnered together on this tiny grant where we examined supervision and safety strategies for ag teachers and what they were using in their high school programs. This project was a launching point for a second grant project where we were part of a multi-institution, multidisciplinary team that made national impacts in developing evidence-based interventions, disseminating curriculum, and developing a risk assessment protocol. That project sparked another project where we developed a train-the-trainer program that taught 150 ag teachers about youth safety in agriculture and provided them with curriculum and materials to take home and integrate into their own classrooms. And then we're also able to measure the impact of that training on both the teachers and the students. We were able to forge a relationship with the web-based company Ag Experience Tracker. And for those of you that don't know, every FFA student in the entire country uses this program to keep their records on. But we're able to provide this seamless integration of safety and instruction to FFA and ag curriculum that's utilized by students and teachers across the country. And yet, this has turned into another grant project where our focus is on digital tools and curriculum development and training for youth and underrepresented populations. Another project that I work on is the National Supply and Demand for Ag Teachers. This started in 2014 with some colleagues in Pennsylvania and Minnesota. We ask every institution that prepares high school agriculture teachers around the country who's graduating and who's licensed and ready to teach. And then we contact every state, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands and say, how many jobs do you have open? And this data is very valuable for people across the country to track the trends and develop targeted programming to recruit and retain the next generation of ag teachers. But one of the most rewarding teaching and research experiences that I've had is working with our graduate students. And let me tell you, our grad students in ASTE research a variety of things. From 21st century skills to socioscientific issues, parent satisfaction with Utah 4-H, women leadership in agriculture, how do we sequence our welding practicums, how do we integrate STEM into food and nutrition curriculum, Or what is our student satisfaction at our USU regional campuses? It's the breadth of the student research in ASTE and answering those unique social science questions in career tech ed and extension education that's really exciting to me. I think I knew that blustery December day when I met Brian, Bruce, Julie, and Deb for the first time that USU was going to be my home. One thing I like to tell all my new student teachers who are going out looking for jobs is that you'll know if the school is the right fit for you. It's not just about taking the first job that you get offered. It's about finding the right place in the sense of collegiality and collaboration I felt during my interview was something that I hadn't seen from any other place that I'd interviewed at. This department is truly a team and a family. So, finally, I know this has been a very long story, but I have some points here. I want you to remember. Remember I told you it was accidentally agriculture? Nothing in this world happens by accident. If you do something accidentally on purpose, you do it intentionally, but you pretend it's something that happened by chance. I often thought that I discovered agricultural education by accident, but I think between my grandpa Hightower and my grandpa Epperson, I think I was destined to develop a passion for teaching and a love of agriculture. I may have had some twists and turns along the way, but I learned something of each one, and at the end, I chose my major. I chose my first teaching job. I chose to go to grad school and come to USU, and those choices were intentional. But it wasn't without a little bit of help. Surround yourself with people who push you to do and be better. Listen to those people who tell you to take a chance, and don't underestimate the power of a relationship. There really is a relationship with others and the teams that I've been on. And the chances I've taken and the people I've collected in my life that have really helped me to get to where I am today. Whether it's students in class or colleagues down the hall or meeting new people on a committee, those relationships have been incredibly valuable. In fact, when we look at the future of higher education, I think it's the relevance, when we look at the future of higher education, it is that relevance and connection to our colleagues, communities, and stakeholders that is going to be critical. I've also learned that you can't do this job alone. You might feel like you're the smartest person in the room, but you still need advice. Take it, listen, and give it a chance. I gravitate to situations where I can team up with amazing people, and we have amazing people here at USU. To me, nothing is more important than the great colleagues and great collaborators that I get to work with every day. You pushed me to get out of my silo, to look at projects holistically, to challenge my ideas, and you supported my decisions. I've learned so much from each and every one of you in the room today, and it is my hope that I can continue to develop as a leader and continue to be intentional about the opportunities and development of faculty and students that I'm privileged to serve. So finally, here we go. Thanks to my parents for encouraging me to take these chances and supporting me through it all. My friends and colleagues and mentors, many of you who are in this room, and the teachers in my life who ask me those hard questions and encourage me to get out of my comfort zone. I stand on the shoulder of giants. Our students who continue to teach me and amaze me with their talents and their skills, Carrie and Heidi, I have to give a shout out to you guys because you are my right-hand women right now. Bruce Miller and Ken White for your confidence and for providing me with opportunities to grow. And most importantly, my family. Mark agreed to take this ride with me and supported every decision I made and is my biggest cheerleader. While he misses his Huskers terribly, the Aggies are really exciting to cheer for right now. Our kids, Caleb and Grace, who I think still tell people they're from Nebraska, but who have had wonderful opportunities and are both proud Aggies. Grace, are you a true Aggie yet? Dang it. And finally, our recent new addition to our family, Kaylin. I'm not sure that you knew what you're getting into when you married Caleb, but you are perfect for us. So thank you all for your support. I love you.